Ooh, the most above average podcast in the galaxy.
Turn the light off, like your memory
Welcome back to the most above average podcast in the galaxy. I am your host, Coach Eric, and this episode is brought to you by Novello. Whether you run a grocery store, cannabis dispensary, peptide company, or anything in between, your business runs on payments. And here's the truth. Most companies are unknowingly throwing away thousands of dollars every month in unnecessary processing fees. At Novello, we handle it all. Credit cards, bank transfers, and even crypto, securely and seamlessly anywhere in the world. We cut the fat from your payment processing, making every transaction smoother and putting those extra dollars right back into your business where it belongs. Stop overpaying, start keeping more of what you earn. Visit Novello.net, Nivelo.net, and see how much you could save today. Now, unfortunately, our good friend Josh could not be with us today, but for a great reason. As many of you know, Josh is a man of the people, and he is a human rights activist. So he is doing the Lord's work today. He is at the headquarters of Costco demanding that they bring ranch to the food courts, because what is pizza without ranch? We salute you on doing the good work, Josh, and we will see you next time. But today, my friends, we are joined by my very good friend, Mr. Ashley. Mr. Ashley, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Best day of my life. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. You have, I say that you, but we together have such a cool job. We get paid to help people, and we get to do it at such an elite level. You are a very elite bikini coach. And this is such a fascinating thing because every division really has its own little character for competitive bodybuilding. So I wanted to ask you, before we even get into a background of who you are and what you do, why bikini? Why has this become your specialty? What is it about that division that just speaks to you that you're like, these are my people?
Uh, I heard something from, I don't know what judge it was, but he was talking about women trying to find their division and what division they should do on stage. And he was kind of encouraging to, not go into prep with this mindset of, especially in the beginning, that you're a bikini athlete, you're a figure athlete, you're this, you're that. Let the division choose you. So I didn't choose bikini. Bikini chose me. When I first got into coaching, it wasn't to be a coach. It was just to honestly put my fiance through a prep. So she was my first client, and my only client for a good amount of time. But then when I went full time into coaching, um, it was basically that was my social proof was her. So I figured when I launched my first New Year's challenge a few years ago that it would be all you know tattooed dark men that were reaching out to me that look the way that I look, wanting to look like me in contest prep shape. But it was all women reaching out to me. So, I didn't look back, question it, and I just ran with it. And like I said, it basically picked me, chose me, and I haven't really looked back.
Now, what were you doing before you got into this? Because you said that Tara was your first one. What were you doing before you got involved in the fitness industry? Have you always been in the fitness industry?
Bro, I don't know how much time do we have here. I'm 38 years old. Like I've been around for a very long time, and I was actually going to do my own post on this. Um, I've been going to the LA Fit Expo in particular because that's coming up this weekend. I have a natural men's physique client competing, which is odd because we're here talking about bikini, and I have a men's physique athlete, my first guy of the year competing. Um, but I used to go there with my friend. My friend's dad owned Tap Out magazine. not Tap Out Clothing, but Tap Out Magazine, which was, the number one media outlet for MMA at the time. We didn't have social media to what it was. It was getting kicked off, but I think back then it was mainly only MySpace, so it wasn't, doing what we're doing right now in terms of Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and, whatever else is new and hip that I don't know about now. Um, but I've been going to the fitness expos for years. But career wise, what I've been doing, before I got into fitness, um, you know, I moved out super young, so I was in call centers, sales at a super young age. I always kind of had like a hustler mentality, not because I was raised on the streets or my parents didn't love me. I came from a good family. There's, I'll never, down talk that. My parents are both really good. In fact, my dad's given me a lot of opportunity that I'm very grateful for. Still to this day. But I chose to do things that were, a little along the lines of hustler mentality. I sold weed in high school. When I first got into um, the gym and discovered PEDs, I was the first guy to be like, how can I make money off of this? I was kind of had like a hustler mentality type deal, so going through the call center, stuff like that. But my dad owns an Italian restaurant. That's why I say I'm very fortunate in the fact that I come from a good family. So I always went back to him whenever I got hit ground bottom, rock bottom, maybe got fired from a job, whatever. I always reverted back to food, because that's where I was raised. I was raised in a kitchen. My dad had the restaurant since I was 2 years old. He still owns the restaurant to this day. So 36 years in business doing the same thing. He's got a really good thing that he has going on over there. But I've always gone back to food. So other stuff in between, odd things here and there, but I was always working for my pops in the Italian restaurant. One day, one of my good friends, Brian, shout out Brian, Be Nutritious. It's a meal prep company. He was one of the first people that started a meal prep company, and I'm like, dude, people are buying your meals from you. Like we're all competitors, but that's what we do. And he's like, dude, yeah, people are asking me to cook meals for me. Because of the boom that we were having on Instagram at that time. So I was like, okay, hey, would you mind if I copied your business idea? I want to do exactly what you're doing, but I want to use my dad's kitchen. Would you be offended since you're my friend? And he's like, dude, I'm in LA, El Monte, you're Orange County, completely different market than me. Go for it, do it. So I started one night, midnight kitchen at my dad's restaurant. Again, I had a free kitchen to cook out of. All those things were already there. Again, pretty much, given to me to do. I didn't have to pay rent. Started as 200 meals, went to 300 meals, 400 meals, and I had a full blown meal prep operation. Um, a fun fact that not many people know about me is that during that time when I had that meal prep company and I was running it on my own, I was actually selling meals to Michael B. Jordan when he was getting ready for Creed 2. So I had a circle, a little pocket of athletes out there or actors out there in LA because I was working with their personal trainer. My little in was I'm going to get in with their personal trainer. I hired Corey Kaye, and he was training all of these actors at the time. It was Terrence J from 106 in Park, Stilo Brim from Ridiculousness. So he was coaching all these guys. I go, I get in with him, give him free meals. He's going to get me on board with all these actors, right? So I ran that meal prep company for myself for a while. I made some bad business decisions because I was young. I had a lot of money that came to me. I didn't want to hire help, so I tried to do everything myself. Ultimately, quality went down, customer service went down, and towards the end of it, I met Tara. Um, you can ask me the story about Tara later if you want, but since we're talking about what I did, we'll skip over that part. But I met Tara. Things didn't work out with the business. I said, hey, let's just fold it and move to Vegas. You know, let's move out to Vegas, try to start new. Went out to Vegas. I worked again more odd jobs. I went back to call centers, selling medical marijuana cards for people that were visiting in Vegas. You're in a dispensary. You give us a call. We get you on a virtual consult with a doctor. Get you a California rec. Did that for a little while. It was good. Ultimately, decided that I was going to stop being stubborn, reach back out to my dad and, say, hey, I want to come back home, get back in the family business, whatever it may be. And then me and my brother decided to start, another meal prep company again. And we opened a meal prep shop in Orange County, Fountain Valley, California. That was right before COVID hit. We literally got in there maybe 6, 7 months before COVID hit. Um, then COVID, hit. It was successful. We were crushing it. We're doing super good. He still has the business to this day. COVID actually helped us. Everyone's at home. We had food. We were selling toilet paper. We were selling chicken. We were selling rice. We were selling groceries. His Restaurant Depot had everything in bulk, but you couldn't just walk in there without, the card or whatever. Um, but so fast forward through that, Tara was coming off of her parents' insurance and needed to get a hernia surgery. So the doctors told her she was a PT at the time at Equinox, get this hernia surgery. You'll be out for max, 3, 4 weeks and you'll be back to work. Well, that wasn't the case. She was out for like 4 or 5 months and money started getting kind of tight because, yeah, I owned a meal prep company, but it's not like I was making, tens of thousands of dollars. My paycheck at the time was like 4 or 5 thousand bucks a month, car payment paid for, all that kind of stuff, but, wasn't making enough to support somebody. So I go, I've been coaching her only for the past, 5, 6 years up until that point, but she was a pro. I go, let me just throw out, a weight loss challenge and see what happens. I think 12 people signed up for the weight loss challenge. It was like $200 for 6 months. This was 2022 going into 2022. Um, and I think maybe 4 or 5 of those people finished and they were all women. They were all moms. So that was my social proof right there. Now I have 4 pieces of social proof. Let me pump this out. Tell them if they tell their friends, I'll give them a free month of coaching, whatever it may be. Next thing I know, I'm up to the neck, at, when I was charging 100, 150 bucks a month, that was a dirt cheap price. I had an influx. I went from 5 clients to 50 overnight, so at that point I couldn't really be as involved in the meal prep business as I wanted to be. So I just told my brother, I said, hey, everything's kind of running without me. I feel terrible for, stepping away like this, but I need to put my full focus here. And then put my 100% focus in meal prep or, online coaching. And I've been doing that ever since full time since January 2022.
Man, that's wild. Well, I know a good bit about you, but I really didn't know that. So hearing that was fascinating, but it really resonated because there's so much similar. I mean, just it's not even just one thing. I'm like, dude, I feel like you're telling me my own story, which is crazy. So, like, I remember you telling someone this story, and I don't remember where I heard it, but I remember going through this too. You made the jump into full-time coaching, and now it's everything that you do. Now you're banking on this being successful. There was a point, and I remember you said that you had like no money. You barely had like $1,700 in athletes coming in, and you were considering taking just a regular job. When you hit that moment where you're just questioning everything, where are you mentally where you can really dig in and say, no, I'm going to hold my ground. I can make something great of this. There's more to it than just the surface level. I know that there's a second part to this that's going to save me.
I'm getting kind of emotional because I didn't have it. Honestly, bro, I didn't have it. It was Tara. I remember the exact day. It was after the first year of coaching because I was coaching so cheap. I wasn't making a ton of money. So I had a lot of clients, but $100 a month, that you can crunch the numbers at the time you're putting into it. It's not even minimum wage at that point for the amount of effort that a good coach is going to give somebody. I'm going to take 2 hours of my day to get on a call with you if we need to. I don't want to get on calls with clients. I'd rather talk through Messenger if we have to, but if that's always going to keep me going, then that's always going to keep me going. But I think I made like 80 grand that year, but I had nothing to show for it at the end of the year. And I go, what am I doing wrong? And it was like, it was February of 2023. And I had like, dude, it wasn't even, it was like literally after I paid my bills, I was going to have like $300 left. And we were working out at the YMCA at the time, which if you guys don't know, it's not a regular YMCA in Huntington Beach. It's a pretty big like influencer spot. Buendia trained there a big amount of time for his contest prep. Joey Swoll trains there pretty often. A lot of pros train at this YMCA in Huntington Beach. And I remember I was sitting there stretching out, and I go, "Should I just get a job at the front desk? Like, I'm putting Tara through all this shit, taking her to Vegas, starting this business, starting that coaching, and she's sticking down for me, and she's the only one that's hurting here, you know? Like, yeah, I'm hurting too, but I'm a guy, you know, I can live off of top ramen fucking water, you know. It's no big deal. You know, as a guy trying to provide for a woman who, you know, again, we can get to the story of Tara later if you want to, but you know, she moved from Baltimore to California to live with me, which originally I was taking care of her with meal prep, but now here I am with, you know, scraping by every month. She's got to paint her own nails. She's got to, you know, do her own lashes and shit like that. And it's like, I felt like shit. And I was looking at this guy. I don't know if you could bleep this out if you don't want to give him credit at the end. You don't have to. I don't work with him anymore. But I was looking at this guy, Brian Mark. He was a business coach. And you and I joke about this all the time of people, you know, reaching out now saying, "Hey, you want to make 10K a month?" And how do you know I don't already make that, you know? But at the time, he was, you know, he's still, I think he's a great coach. I learned a lot from him. I can't not say that I didn't get at least some marketing skills from him. Um, but he had reached out to me because he saw me watching his stories, and he's like, "Hey, this is, you know, this is the price that it is. It's $350 a month, blah, 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 blah." And I go, "Yeah, you know, everything sounds good, everything, bro. But I'm struggling right now. You know, I don't have much, and I don't want to take this last $350 that I could be giving Tara to go get her nails done, you know, and put it towards coaching if I don't follow through, you know. I'm gonna go work this front desk job, you know, whatever." And I remember I was with her at the time. I'm gonna get this front desk job, and I'll come back in a couple months when I've saved up $1,700 to pay for your coaching program. Um, and right away, he sends me a voice message back. And I remember I was in the car with her, and she heard it, and it hit me in the chest. And I felt so embarrassed. He goes, "Hey, bro, how about this? You give me your $350. If you don't make your money back within the first month, I will send you your $350 back, buy you a pizza for you and your girl to eat dinner, and pay for her to get her nails done." I was like, "Bro, I got some grown man telling me that he's not, like, it was, you know, it was a slew of emotions." And I looked at Tara, and she was like, "How much do you have?" And I was like, "I got 323 or something like that." And she goes, "I'll send you the $50, do it." And I go, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, do it. I believe in you. You're a good coach. You know what you're doing. Like, do it 100%. I go, "This is going to take away from it." She goes, "No, it's not. You're going to make the money back." And bro, within like 48 hours, just from implementing like a few strategies from him, like doing one of those simple Five Guys posts, looking for 5 people that want to lose 20 pounds in the next 30 days or whatever. Boom, got 10 clients of people that were already in my power network. I wasn't asking for sales at that point, you know. I didn't have a script. I didn't have a setup. If you called me and said you could order $50, afford $50 a month, that's what I gave you. You know, but this guy gave me a structure of, you know, charge 250 a month or offer 12-week programs at this amount of money, whatever it may be. And boom, I made the money back like that. And that right there was the moment. In that moment, if I wasn't with Tara, or she didn't give me that green light to go ahead and do it, I probably within that next week would have been working at a job, you know, a corporate job, whether it was for the YMCA, whether it was, you know, for In-N-Out Burger, whatever. I was willing to just go to corporate America and climb the ladder, you know, get up to, you know, 60, 70, $80,000 a year with benefits and happy and, you know, whatever it may be, content at that life. But yeah, it wasn't me, dude. I didn't, it was all her 100%.
It, it's something that resonates because I could tell you exactly where I was. I remember I was driving. There's this one spot in this town that when I first met my wife, before she became my wife, it's called California Street. It's over in Burlingame. It's south of San Francisco. And it's just this little nothing road. It's kind of like a shitty, just like pothole filled road. There's nothing there. You know, you're driving by little shack houses that are priced way too expensive. And she was like, "Oh, it'd be so nice to have a house right over here." And I remember driving by and I told her out loud, and I think about it all the time. It's like, I'm going to work my ass off to give you the life that you deserve. And I never stopped. There's definitely been times where it's been rough city for sure. especially when I made the jump into coaching full time, and I was like, okay, like we're going to turn this into a job. And I didn't have the same business coach that you did, but I remember I talked to this guy, and if I could remember his last name, I would gladly give him the credit he deserves for this. I did a business audit with this guy, Dustin. And if I could remember his coaching company, I will gladly tag it at the end of the episode. He told me something that resonated so hard with me that it literally changed the way that I did everything. And I contacted this guy out of a recommendation from a friend of ours, Nico. He said, talk to this guy. He really helped, gave me some good structure and whatnot. And I was like, okay. And I knew that I needed to take the emotion out of the sale. And I had a really hard time with it because I got into coaching because I want to help people. And the guy told me, I've told the story before, but long story short, he said, you have to own your intellect. What is something that you provide that no one else can provide because it's exclusive to you? If you take 5 trainers, put them next to each other, and you say, why should I hire you? And everyone tells you the same crap. If you should hire me because I care and blah, blah, blah. You as the consumer, you're going to pick the cheapest person if they all offer the same shit. So if you have something that's exclusive to you, you can offer a higher ticket price, make more money from it, yada, yada, yada. And I remember him saying, and my wife has told me this too, because I still battle this till this day. Like, we have a huge team. We're worldwide. We have people in all sorts of different countries, but I still have a hard time taking the emotion out of the sale. And both of them were like, if you go on vacation, you still owe your mortgage. You still owe your PG&E. You still owe your garbage and utilities and all your other bullshit stuff. It doesn't stop just because you went on vacation. So when someone has an issue and they're like, oh, like things are really tight, could you do this price instead? A large part of me wants to help them and say, yeah, I can do that. But it's like, no, it is a business. I've been doing this a long time, and I've established myself into the rankings of a very high level coach. We have world records in powerlifting. We have pro cards, all sorts of athletes in bodybuilding in every division. And I have to tell myself that all the time. And I've been doing this a long time, that no, this is the price, and not everyone is going to be able to afford you. And that's just the way that it is. And I tell you this to make a big ass circle to go back. I started charging really cheap like you did. And then everyone's like, you're undervalued. You're undervalued. You got to charge more. You got to charge more. And it felt really weird to start asking for more money. Did you go through something like that too? Were you feeling, I don't even know if you'd want to call it like an imposter syndrome, but just uneasy about, hey, I'm making the jump from $200 a month. Now I want $300 a month. Or were you just like, I'm the shit. Give me all your money.
So, I think that I did for a while. And honestly, it took up until about this year. Cause I mean, really, my full-time coaching business is relatively a baby. I'm not a baby coach, but the business itself as a full-time gig is still technically what would be the IRS would consider as a negative business. It's, you could first 3 years be, at negative, so, it legitimately took me until this year to kind of ditch that into imposter syndrome, but not even the imposter syndrome, the syndrome of like, what if I lose this next year? Maintaining my numbers, so to speak, for the last 2 years, maybe a slight increase from last year, but there was really that jump 2 years ago from the third year prior that was at 80. That was when I took it up to kind of up to here, almost doubled. And then last year, maybe went up 10 or 20%. So after looking at year end from last year, and last 2 years have been a tough year for me. I at the 2024 Indie Pro had a seizure at the show. I was overworking myself with too cheap of clientele. Not that they were too cheap of people, but I gave the prices of being very cheap. I had a lot of people. I think at the time I had about 75, 80 clients on my own, was traveling often for shows. I had a seizure after prejudging. I ended up in the hospital in Indy. They had to intubate me because the fentanyl and whatever that they gave me when I was having the seizure dropped my heart rate down so low that my sleep apnea started kicking in. It was bad news. Anyways, they intubated me for 4 days. Um, I got out of the hospital, and again, another moment where I woke up and 4 days freaking later, I'm in Indiana on a Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't even remember what day it was. And I look, and Terry's the first person looking at me. I'm like, "Where's my phone? I got to work." And she's like, "Dude, you're not working. Everybody knows what happened, you know?" So I think that was, kind of one of the moments where I was like, okay, one, I need to take a step back. And if I want to do this for a long time, I need to scale back on the amount of clients that I have. And I need to be able to still make the same amount of income that I'm making. I can't survive on less, So at that point, I started bumping up my prices, and I would wait. Once I had a certain number, I would bump up. So it wasn't just like I was like, well, today I want to bump up my prices. It's like, okay, hit a benchmark. Okay, now I'm at 35 clients. Every new client that comes in now is going to get the new rate or whatever. But even still, up until the new year, it was like I was kind of hesitant. But seeing those numbers is when this year I'm like, you know what? No, this is where I'm at. I'm not coming down. And it's not because I don't want to, but I think you can agree with me on this. Typically, if you're on a call and somebody's asking for less and you give it to them, those aren't the clients that end up seeing success. I think either somebody makes it happen, they'll find a way to make it happen if it's important to them, or they're not going to be on that call with you. And I'm sure you've done this before. You've probably seen athletes with a ton of potential, and maybe they didn't reach out to you because of finances, where you're like, you know what, I see a lot in this person, or this person got screwed over by another coach. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a deal, and that worked out. That was the best client that you had for the 6 months prior to that. So it's not that you could, maybe you're a little different than me. I think you're the same in that we want to take care of people, we want to help people, but it's like when they come to you already saying those types of things, it's like you kind of know where it's going to go. And you kind of had mentioned something, and I wanted to kind of touch on it. I wrote it down when you were talking, but that when you drove by that house and you were like, I'm not going to stop working until I get there. It's the same scenario, but a little bit different for me. It was that for the rest of my life, no man is ever going to be able to need to pay for her nails and her dinner. I don't care what the fuck that takes. Excuse my language. You can blurt it out if you need to, but I'm going to make sure that for the rest of her life, those things are taken care of. Maybe the house and all that kind of stuff that'll come later, but that one moment when he made me feel like somebody else had to buy her dinner, I was like, nope, never again. I don't care what it takes.
There's definitely been, those times where you see someone and you're like, man, that person's got it. Like they don't even know how great they can be. And what I found out over the years that when you think that you're doing someone a solid, like the amount of other coaches that reach out asking for help or like, hey, like, will you, you tag along and, kind of help me, peak this person or help me figure out what to do with their blood work or whatever. I have no qualms with doing that. I mean, the amount, if people knew how many other coaches I co-coach for some of their athletes, pro as well as amateurs, the internet would lose its fucking mind. But what I've noticed that when people ask for a freebie, it always backfires because then they either there's no incentive for them to give a shit because
Yeah.
it didn't cost them anything. And I think one of the more frustrating ones is there was this kid, and I'll tell you, and I'll even say his name, Zach Wild. This guy has more potential than anyone you've ever seen in bodybuilding. He is unfortunately currently wasting every ounce of his talent. He contacted me and said, "Hey, I had this coach and I knew the situation already. I knew it was a bad situation." And he goes, "Things are not gravy. You came highly recommended by X, Y, and Z." And I said, "I'd love to help you. These are my rates." I was like, "I know you or have paid for this other coach, so I want to work with you and I'll do this." Basically, it was like a 50% reduction. And he was like, "Oh man, like that's really stretching it." I was like, "Homie, like that's me basically doing this for free." And I was like, "And I told you I would go to the show. I'll be there backstage. I'll buy the backstage pass myself. Like I'm not asking anything from you other than for you to just do work." And he lasted like, I don't even know if he lasted 4 weeks. And then he just kind of was like, it's cool, bro. I got it. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you don't fucking got it.
Famous last words. I'm gonna do this on my own.
Yeah, and then he did his show, and so it was like, I don't know how you look worse than when you left me and you were still like 8 weeks out from your show, but whatever.
Yeah. Hey,
And,
give me a second. I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. We can edit it out,
okay.
right?
And we're back from our pee break.
But yeah, no, it's crazy how that stuff backfires. And like I said, trying to help people out. I actually even right now, and I yesterday I took on a client. Um, I know that she's a good person. I don't really want to talk about her name or her coach really right now. Maybe she'll talk about it later in the future. But since it's so new, um, she's one of my clients, posing clients. So I know that she's good for it. But basically, this guy offered her a money back guarantee on coaching. Um, I do the same thing, but this guy offered her a money back guarantee. She did everything he told her, that she needed to do. So now she's, telling him that she wants the money back. This guy doesn't specialize in bikini, and he said, I could coach you for bikini. Um, he won't give her the money back. So she's like, I need the next few, I need another 2 more weeks, but I definitely want to work with you. And I go, look, how about this? Because I offer a money back guarantee, and whether we work out or not, I'll coach you for the first month for free. I'll give you, month number one for free. I'll coach you there. And as a sorry for all coaches on the internet that do online coaching that don't need to have this piece of shit as a representation of us. There are good coaches out there that don't do things like this. And your story is terrible to hear, what you're going through. I can't fix it. I can't get your money back. I can't report the guy to anywhere. All I can do is show you what a good coach should do. But if at the end of the month you decide you want to go off on your way, at least I hope that you walk away maybe never wanting an online coach again, but at least being like supportive of a friend that goes, hey, I'm going to hire an online coach. Yeah, there's this one guy that I work with is really nice. Not, don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do. Those guys are all crooks. They're going to take your money and then never talk to you again.
You and I talk a lot, not on the podcast, but just in life. The amount of athletes that you and I save from bad coaches is alarming. I think last year I probably made every mortgage payment for my house just from saved athletes. And it's heartbreaking because sometimes, you know, the, I used to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. They'd be like, oh, you can't call them stupid because they just don't know. And you can't call someone stupid if they don't know because they're not making a poor choice. They're making the choice with information that they have at their disposal, which apparently is very minuscule. And so I try to be polite about it, but then sometimes you just hear stories and you're like, there's no way you can just physically be that stupid and be allowed to live alone. Like, what the fuck? And it kills me because I get a lot of people that claim to be specialists in areas that they don't even know the basics. Like most people understand that my specialty is with diabetics, autoimmune related issues, as well as building gigantic super freaks. I can do all the other things, but those are the areas that I really thrive in. Like I told this on the internet early or late last year that this would be my last year taking on any bikini athletes, and that moving forward, I would just tell them realistically just to call you. And it's not that I have anything against it. It's just, it's not an area that I really love. It's not an area that I thrive. And so when I get these athletes, they're like, oh, hey, I hired so-and-so and, it didn't pan out right. It's like, well, that's not what they do. You're asking someone who specializes in, you know, holistic nutrition to be like, hey, I want you to write me the greatest steroid program ever. That's not what the fuck they do. So when I call it saving athletes. When I take over someone's bad coaching, I try to figure out what went wrong. and how to basically reverse engineer whatever they had issues with. Especially like when bikini girls come over and they're like, oh, my coach put me on 80 micrograms of T3 and 140 micrograms of Clen every day, and all my Clen is done fasted in one sitting. I'm like, no wonder why you feel like shit and have nausea for 8 hours straight. Yeah, yeah, and you're blurry.
Parkinson's, essentially.
Yeah. I bring this up because I know you save a lot of athletes, which kudos to you. Congratulations. And I know you do a great job with it. I've seen the girls. What are some of the issues that you see when some of these people come to you? And, maybe it's not even they come to you, or you're just in the industry. So you see what other people are doing and you're like, that's probably not the best route to go. It could be anything, obviously the PED abuse for some of these girls is atrocious. And then, the 900 calories and 2 hours of cardio. What else are you seeing that's pretty consistent in your world of things that
So
should be stay steered clear from?
I think, a couple of things before I talk about maybe I guess it'll kind of tie into it in the sense of like things that, I think people should kind of like red flag look for. And that is, if something doesn't feel right to you, if it's not sitting well to you, then you need to do morally or what you feel is best. So even if, let's say for example, I tell you to do 30 minutes of cardio or whatever it may be, and you think that's too much. Let's say 30 minutes of cardio is too much for you to do a day, use your best judgment there. If you think that what's going on with your coach isn't the right thing, you don't need to keep going. You don't need to just shut up and follow the plan. One of the reasons why I think I like bikini so much is because it essentially is an entry level division, not necessarily from the perspective of can you get to skin and bones to Miss Olympia in 5 years. It's entry level and it appeals to the everyday woman to watch. The everyday girl that goes to the gym may not want to be a bikini competitor, but she'll pay attention to Amy Delgado or Ashley Kaltwasser. She's not going to pay attention to Sid. You know what I mean? She's not going to look at that person. She may not even watch the Mr. Olympia, but she knows who Laura Lee is. Um, and I think that there's so many bad things that can happen just from a psychological perspective, that can give people a bad taste in their mouth towards bodybuilding, whether it's bikini, men's physique, fit model, figure, whether, I don't want people's first impression of this sport to be that. So I think first and foremost, if you think something's not what it should be, and this person tells you, yes, this is what it should be, even if it's me, and you believe that I'm wrong, then you were also entitled as that person, whether that coach gives you a money back guarantee or you've got to chalk your losses up and go somewhere else. Don't stick it out just because. You don't want to be messed up mentally, or physically, hormonally, stuff like that in the long run. But I would say the things that, to me are the biggest flags, and it could be coaches or athletes, is just the blindness to PEDs. One, I think there's a high number of athletes that are just willing to take anything and everything. I've been there myself, don't get me wrong. I'm not just going to sit here and say, you're a bad person if you want to max the threshold and grow as fast as you possibly can. But if you start to have side effects, 2, 3 months later, don't blame bodybuilding. It was because you wanted to start as a marathon sprinter before you even, jogged around the track, which, hey, by all means, go for it. If the first compound you want to put in your body is tren, I know that's a little extreme, but hey, by all means, go ahead. So be it. Do it. But I just think that there's this blindness of, even in coaching, that hey, for example, these 3 compounds help for cutting. Let's throw all 3 at the person rather than let's try this one thing first, see if this works first, if this is good enough, or let's figure out what's stopping this person from losing weight. Is speeding up her heart rate even more going to help out, or is a rest needed? So I think I always say when I get on these calls with people that are coming from aggressive PED use or like repetitive PEDs that do the same thing, and they're taking 2 of a similar compound, I go, some of these coaches out there, they're just throwing spaghetti against the wall. And for some of them, it works. The athlete looks good on stage. Yeah, they're on a cocktail of PEDs. Maybe they needed it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they could have got away with less. That I'm not going to speculate and say what, but I think it's just the blindness, the sometimes having that mindset, even from an athlete perspective, but maybe as a coach not to ask, but as an athlete to just keep blindly working if you're already ran into the ground, knowing when to speak up and say, you know, I'm not, my returns are diminishing, so I don't know if I would necessarily say that there's one thing that I would point a finger at a coach for, because I do think that, it takes two to tango, right? And when some of these athletes come to me and I change their protocols, it's almost like they wanted that to happen the entire time. But it's like you were even in power of doing that. Let's say that coach told you to take Primo Anavar test, but you were just taking the test or you were just taking the Anavar. The coach doesn't know what you're physically taking, like I, I know that I told you to take, 10 milligrams of Anavar, but maybe you didn't. And I thought you were the whole time, but the diet and training were so good that you got results anyways. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, this worked, so I think it comes both sides, man. But, I think the one thing that I tend to course correct with clients is getting back to bodybuilding, you know, and I say that in the sense of like putting training first, not focusing on going as low as possible with calories, going as high as possible with cardio, going as high as possible with drugs. If we need to do high cardio, we need to do high cardio. If we need to do low food, we need to do low food. But if we're not training hard in the gym all the way up until what, 2, 3 days out, maybe max, depending on how the person recovers, the shape's not going to be there on stage. You're just going to look, you're going to have lines, yeah, but you're not going to have that roundness or bubbliness on stage. So I think I would say the main issue that I would see is one, I guess that would be communication, lack of communication or lack of giving you a why behind things. We're still in that shut up and follow the plan mindset. And like as a coach, sometimes there's going to be times where we say, hey, trust me, you're not fat. Keep going. You're just got the prep goggles on. But, not being able to have the open dialogue. And then I would say that, not being training at the forefront of things. I think that the PEDs and stuff like that, yes, it is a problem, but I think that for every bad coach that's giving out the PEDs, there's going to be an athlete that's willing to push the envelope and take more, whether the coach told them to do it or didn't do it. I don't think that it's right for a coach to bully somebody into taking PEDs, whether they want to, or, I just don't think that that's the responsibility of the coach. I think that that's the topic of the athlete. What can I take to help? Where will it help me out? What do we need to look for? What blood markers do we need to be wary of? Okay, why is it bad if why can't I take Tren? I'm a bikini athlete. I want to take Tren. Why can't I take it? Okay, well, if you really want to take it, you could physically you can take it, but the chances of this, and this happening are very high. I can't guarantee you that if you take Tren for 2 weeks, all of those things will happen. There's no, 100% guarantee. You might take Tren for 2 weeks and get the gains of a girl that got in 6 months. Please, nobody go out and do that. Please do not. Bikini girls don't start going out and doing that. But based on my experience, this is not, what you should be doing. So I know that was kind of like a roundabout way of answering that. But if you ask me, I've seen it all, brother. I've seen it. People telling me that their coaches don't respond to them during the week, that it's just once a week only that they respond. I hear about client coaches telling people backstage, right when they walk off stage, you did this to yourself. You look like shit. You shouldn't have done that. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's a time and place to have a recap of prep, but when the athlete just gets off stage, I told you not to wear that bikini on stage. Sorry for the girl that's listening to this message. I'm not going to call you out, but girl told me that got off stage. Coach started blasting her. You shouldn't have wore that bikini on stage, yada, yada, yada. And this was in front of a bunch of people. You know, I've heard of, again, girls taking Tren, from a well-known coach in the industry. I've heard of, I had a girl come to me from the Philippines on 650 calories at 140 micrograms of clen. I helped this girl out. I reversed within 10 days. She won the overall. And then she had the nerve after the show to shout out the other coach that fucked her up, but took my advice under the table for 10 days, followed everything that I told her to do, which I didn't expect her to shout me out. But I'm like, why'd you go back afterwards and paint him as this god? You know, and I had to stop doing that. I don't do it anymore. I don't help people that have coaches anymore. You're gonna tell your coach that you're leaving them before I help you now, because I would help these people out, and then the Monday would roll around, and they would be thanking their coach, saying that their coach is this amazing person. It's like, I don't want you to I don't want you to thank me if it was under the table and we didn't want anyone to know about it. But I don't want you to go back on. You just told me what a piece of shit that guy was on Friday. Now you're on Monday telling everybody on social media how this person is the best coach in the world, and you know everyone should work with them, and yada yada yada. If that was your energy, don't find yourself in my DM. You know, yeah.
I've noticed that a lot of the times that when stuff like that happens, where you know the quote unquote the bad coach or whatever that gets the praise at the end, it's a team related thing. I've helped out way more people than I can count for situations like that. They come to me like, hey, you know, my coach doesn't know is always the first like headline for the message. And then I'm like, oh, cool. So it sounds like I'm your new coach. And then, you know, we go through all these things. I fix the blood markers or whatever it may be. We change this, we change that. I adjust the food because the food sensitivity is all sorts of kind of wonkiness. And then they win. The amount of people that I've helped coach for an overall win that I did not get credit for, that I have the receipts for. I keep all the messages, homie. It's astounding. And they're like, oh, you know, this team, this coach who's a big name coach, give him all the praise. And the amount of I'm circling back because I want to talk about the lack of communication thing. The athlete needs to communicate with the coach too. So when you go to interview your potential coach, that should be one of the main questions: is what is your type of communication? Some people are email only, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are still very attentive to the email only situation. Some people do WhatsApp. Some people have a custom app that they keep everything in. Some people want to have phone calls. They want to do, you know, what do they call it? Zoom. They want to do phone calls, text messages, whatever. But I will make sure that everyone is very clear to ask, what is the contact frequency that I can, as an athlete, can expect from you as a coach? Because if you're a once a week kind of person, how are you going to peak someone for a show correctly? You need a lot of information, and by the time you get to it a week later, that information's already changed. I've got a bunch of coaching friends, and we're in this group chat, and we were talking about the 24/7 workload when you're doing contest prep related stuff. Especially as an athlete gets closer to the show, you need a lot of information. I want morning pictures with morning weight. I want evening pictures with evening weight, so I can see the discrepancy between how much weight we are losing in the morning to know how to keep the fluid, how to keep the food, how everything's going. There's a lot of information that goes along with this.
Yeah.
Are we depleting? Are we loading? Are we just flatlining it in? There's all sorts of things that go with it. People that do contest prep are living on their phone, their computer, their tablet, whatever it is during these times. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be on a family vacation, you could be at your home, you could be in the hotel, you could be there at the show with the athlete. But a good coach is very hands-on. I still think about this every once in a while. An athlete of mine, his wife was being coached by another, you know, high-level coach. I'm not going to say his name. Email only. Well, this guy goes on vacation while this pro is supposed to be peaking. They can't get a hold of him. They can't get a hold of him for 4 days before the show. Both of them are freaking out. He didn't give them any kind of instructions like, hey, you should be eating this. This is what you should be doing with your water. This is what we're going to do with a water pill. No information, nothing. So guess who gets a phone call, not a text, a legitimate phone call at 2 a.m? This guy. Guess who peaked that athlete? This guy. That athlete had another show 2 weeks later. That coach still on vacation Guess who picked that athlete for that show? This guy. I've Dude, I travel all over the world. Bodybuilding has given me an amazing life. I'm still on my phone. I'm still on the computer. My screen time for actual work on my cell phone is alarming. I don't think it's anything less than 10 hours a week or 10 hours a day. Like, if you're providing a high level service, your communication should also be pretty high level.
Yeah. I mean, that girl I was telling you about that had that coach, I was in Tokyo coaching the Masters Olympia, and this girl lived in another country. So here I am. I mean, on Masters Olympia coaching, it's still kind of a vacation too. So I'm on vacation, I'm coaching, and I'm coaching somebody else in another. So I'm doing all of these things, and like I say, it's I, so I want to say one thing in that I think that there's types of coaching, right? I think like you mentioned about interviewing. I think that people should interview coaches. Now, I also want to say something from a coaching perspective from our shoes. Don't pre-interview before you're ready to hire. Wait till you're ready to hire somebody to interview coaches. So if you have that coach on a call that sounds good and you want to make the move, you're not like, oh, well, actually, I'm looking for 90 days from now. Be sure you're in a position to ready to, to hire the coach, but interview 50 coaches if you want to. If the first 49 don't work out, hire the 50th, but be in a position where you're ready to hire a coach. Otherwise, just ask little questions on Instagram. It means a lot to us to not take the time to get on a sales call, because I don't know about everybody, but I'll take a long time on these calls, 60 minutes sometimes, and I don't force people to buy or put people in a position where I want to shake you upside down because that's a sales tactic that I need to do. Um, Interview the people that you want to talk to, but make sure that you're ready to go. Now, like I said, I want to before I get too far away, I don't think that, the email only thing or not being hands on automatically dictates or means that a coach is a bad coach. Um,
No,
I,
no, not
I,
at all.
I think that for most people, they need somebody who's pretty hands on. There are some people who thrive without that, maybe, super high level athletes or whatever it may be, or maybe you've already worked with this coach for 10, 5, 10 shows or whatever it may be. So I do think that is something that can work. For majority of the time, it doesn't work. I can say it can work. Like, so for example, if you were coaching me, and you knew how I was waking up every single Saturday morning, and you were like, hey, eat these meals, throughout the day today. On Saturday, you know, send me photos every hour or whatever it may be. And every hour, the response was just, okay, looks good. And then I get on stage and I crush the show. I would be fine. But there would be some athletes in that situation that would be freaking the fuck out. So, I think it's kind of on the coach to figure out, how do I need to coach this athlete and be prepared to coach everybody differently. If there's a type of person that you can't coach, maybe you're very political and you don't like Republicans. I would suggest not taking on, Republican clients. If there's a certain type of person that you cannot get through to, it's okay as a coach to say, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm the coach for you. But I think part of, I would say a lost art of the current market of coaching is being able to coach the individual, not just here's this perfect bikini program that's going to get you, on stage. I'm going to make your perfect adjustments every single week. I need to figure out the best way to bring out the best in every single athlete. And that's going to look different across the board. Some clients, if I talk to them too much, they get annoyed. Some clients, if I don't respond with enough letters in my messages, they think that I'm mad at them about something. So I try my best to kind of, without compromising too much who I am and the way that I coach, be mindful of all that with all my clients. But I think for the most part, no one can coach someone, peak someone a week at a time. If that's the case, I definitely that's an immediate red flag. I think even the coaches that aren't hands on are still going to be at least on show day or the day before. Every hour, I need to see what you're looking like in photos. Again, unless it's like we've done this 50,000 times, you know what it feels like to hold water. If you start to hold water, let me know. But I mean, me and Tara aren't even to that point. We still it's photos every hour.
And even if you have an athlete that you've been working together with consistently for years, you know the deal. Every prep is always different. There's always,
Yeah.
and And I tried to explain this to, so I have a couple of athletes on my team that I mentor to get them out of just being a personal trainer into becoming a full blown coach, which big difference. But I've tried to explain to them, like, for the first couple of big shows that you take an athlete to, you should go with them, because if you live in one environment and then you go to, like, let's say, like, we're from California and then we go to New Jersey for Team Universe, humidity plays a role into that as well. And so you have a lot of other guesswork that needs to be put into that as well. So there's a lot of other outside factors. And, people are like, oh, that seems like such like a bullshit thing. It's not. It's like, if you're truly prepping an athlete at a top tier level, those are some factors that you got to bring into the equation. Because if you come from an area like where I live in Northern California, that's a very, very dry climate. And then I go to Mississippi where my car is sweating at 5 a.m. Yeah, the water load and the water peak and the cut, the everything, like, it changes the way that you feed an athlete too, because now you're looking at the food osmolarity way more dramatically. Because if I give someone cream of rice in a dry climate, cool, like there's very little osmolarity to the food. It's not going to move a lot of water. But if I've got someone who can't stop sweating and I'm giving them, we'll use a rustic potato, for example, because that pulls a shitload of water like oatmeal does. Am I going to dehydrate them from the inside out before we're truly ready to load? Are we going to have a problem loading from these kind of foods? Do I need to adjust their sodium intake? What's happening with their potassium and magnesium? Maybe I need to make alterations to that too, because now they're sweating and it's changing the balance of the electrolytes. There's all sorts of things to go with it. So being able to pivot is the point of what I was getting at, is with the communication. I remember I had an athlete reached out to me. She, her check-ins were fine, never had any additional questions for me. So I just made the adjustments, hey, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. So let's keep moving, keep making great progress. She goes, hey, I want to talk to you on the phone. I said, sure, fire away. She goes, I feel like you're not very attentive. It's like, well, what? I don't know why you would think that. She goes, well, I know that you stay in contact like on a daily basis with some of your athletes. And I'm just wondering why you don't do that with me. It's like, I'm sorry that you feel left out. You've never raised any concern that you need any, quote unquote, babysitting. You seem to be thriving very well. She goes, well, I just want to feel like I have a good connection with you. Like, I'm putting a lot of my trust in you and I just don't know you. It's like, you know what? That's pretty fair. So having that level of communication, saying, hey, I want to talk to you more to feel comfortable with you. Beautiful. I'm totally fine for that. You had that communication with me. You expressed your concern. We addressed it and we thrived.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important for the athlete to not feel afraid to push the envelope with the coach and say, hey, I want something a little bit more. And it could be something simpler, like, hey, I just want to talk to you on a more regular base. I don't want to feel like I'm just, client number 13 on the list. Totally get that.
And maybe for that coach having that conversation, they're like, hey, you know what, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm not going to ever be that coach, so we should just go our separate ways. You never know, it could, or it could be positive, but I think
Yeah.
unless you actually say something, and I think that's a misconfusion right now with a lot of people, in the sense of like, I'm a workhorse, I'm going to do exactly what I'm told, so I'm not going to question anything, I'm not going to ask any questions. And it's good to be a workhorse, but also understand things. When I'm a client of somebody's, last prep when I was working with guts, um I would ask questions on things. Hey coach, can I have this instead of this? And usually the things I was asking for, because I'm a coach, it wasn't too far off. It was like rice for bagels or something like that, or whatever. Maybe it was very, very simple swaps. um but if you don't ask, hey, why am I doing a dip? What should I be focusing? My triceps or my chest? You don't just assume, figure out why you're doing what you're doing, so you don't get through 6 months and, yeah, it's scheduled on your push day, but are you pushing with your chest or are you pushing with your triceps? Simple questions like that. You ask those questions, the more you understand, the more you know why. And I try to do that with all my clients, not saying that every coach does. And when I get on sales calls with my clients, I tell them, That's what they are to me. Just understand that if you get on a call with me, a consult call, that's a sales call. I just want to put that out there to everyone that's listening into this. But if I get on a sales call with someone, I tell people, flat out, this is exactly, how it's going to be. Um, I'm going to try to get the best out of you. But if there's something that I don't know and that I can't help you with, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to say, hey, this is out of my scope of practice. We either need to refer out or we can figure it out together. If you don't trust your GP is going to have your hip mobility at your number one help, then hey, I could help you out. We could try to find a PT. We can kind of walk it through. Or hey, you want to stick with an HRT doctor, whatever it may be. If it's out of my scope of practice, I'm never gonna, not talk about it. But if someone doesn't mention something to me, if you don't tell me that you have PCOS before we start prep, I'm never gonna know that you have PCOS. So you gotta talk about it. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid. So I've been wanting to talk about this, and I wanted to kind of squeeze it in at the right time, and there was never really like a perfect segue to this. So I'm gonna make my own segue because I can do whatever the fuck I want. Dealing with stress and stress management is what we would call it. We're constantly helping other people mitigate their stress. You and I have a huge workload, and it's a lot. And there's a lot of days that we do a lot of therapy for people. And some of those days are really heavy. Dude, people tell me some fucked up stories, and it ruins me for the day. And like I'll just go, I'll sit down next to my wife, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like they just kill me. But I want to go back to the seizure thing because you were working yourself to the bone. Yeah, the seizures. But this parlayed into another really big ordeal. Are you okay talking about it?
Yeah.
Okay. I try to ask. So you get the seizures. You're flying home to California, and you develop these crazy blood clots. Walk me through that. So you're on the plane home. When do you start feeling funky?
Oh, bro, I was funky when I came out of it. I mean, I don't know if you've, I don't think most people have been intubated, but imagine for 4 days, you're sleeping, no food, you're getting fed through an IV. You're going to wake up and your body is going to be thrashed. Um, just waking up from a seizure in general, for anyone that's had a seizure, you know what it feels like. You feel like you just ran a, I've never ran a marathon, but I can imagine because your body, you're shaking, it's very, very demanding on your body. And typically in times like that, when you are having a seizure, typically one of your electrolytes is going to be off. I don't think that anyone has a seizure if there isn't an electrolyte imbalance. And I think that's probably one of the first things that they do give someone having a seizure is electrolytes in that water to try to kind of hit that on the head. Um, but I woke up in the hospital. I had no clue what was going on. The first thing happened, I opened my eyes. I said, "What's your medical record number?" My what? What's your medical record number? I had no clue what was going on. The first thing that happened as soon as I opened my eyes, it was on a Tuesday. Um, so I finally gave them my medical record number. They couldn't verify my insurance for some odd reason. I don't know if it's because they don't have Kaiser in Indiana or what it is, but they couldn't verify my insurance. And um, basically wanted to get me out of the hospital as soon as possible. So once they realized that, okay, he's coherent, let's get him out of the hospital. Mind you, I was intubated for 4 days, no compression socks on. So I didn't put compression socks on my legs. Um, he asked me how I was getting home. I'm flying home to California. He goes, "Well, can you drive?" I'm not going to rent a car from Indianapolis, drive back to California. I goes, "I just saw you have a seizure on the plane." I go, "Is that the only thing you're worried about is me having a seizure?" He goes, "Yeah, I don't want you to have a seizure on the plane." I go, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. This has happened to me before. I've had seizures in the past from when I was younger, drug overdoses and stuff like that. But he didn't mention anything about blood clotting, anything like that. So we get back to the hotel. We say, okay, I will get the medication. We'll stay the night in Indianapolis. Make sure everything's fine. If I wake up in the morning and I'm okay, I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to have another seizure. I know how my body is. Um, at this point, I'm slow. Everything feels slow. Everything feels heavy. It's hard to breathe. I just thought I was exhausted still at this point. We're walking through the airport, and I remember Tara, we're trying to catch our connecting flight from Indianapolis to California. We were in Las Vegas, and she's walking ahead of me, and I can't keep up. And I'm like, babe, please slow down. And she's getting frustrated. She just thinks that I don't know. I didn't know what was going on either. I just thought I was tired, hard of breathing. I didn't know what was going on, but my calf kind of hurt. And I thought that maybe when I had the seizure that my leg twitched or something, or I had a cramp, or, because if you cramp up when you have a seizure, it ends up just being like a sore muscle for, a few weeks after. Let me be my calf cramped up, whatever. So I get home, um, we're on the couch, and I remember my leg was hurting more. So I start hitting it with the the hypervolt, try to start hypervolting out my calf. Maybe I was dehydrated. I didn't drink water for 4 days. I was just on an IV. Um, you know, so I tried to, hypervolt that, nothing happens. This was the 3rd of July, and 4th of July, Huntington Beach, it pops off over here. We close the streets down. It's a, it's an ordeal. I'd say it's probably a bigger holiday, 4th of July in Huntington Beach than Christmas is most places in the United States. It's wild. They celebrate America like no other, um, as they should. But um, so my leg was hurting. We walked to the liquor store. I didn't want to hold Terry down. Hey, you want to get some wine? It's 4th of July. Fireworks are going to be going off. So walking to the liquor store, we live an eighth of a mile, 10th of a mile to the liquor store. I start dragging my leg. I'm like, man, my leg is hurting. This isn't right. This isn't normal. Something's not going on here. My calf is hurting real bad. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. I don't know. This doesn't seem right. So that night, fireworks started going off. She goes, you want to go to the beach? Babe, I can't stand. Like, my leg hurts really, really fucking bad. I don't know what's going on. You can go to the beach if you want to, but you should probably stay in. Um, Really crazy story. It's going to sound made up, but someone actually ended up getting stabbed an hour later outside my front door.
Oh,
Some
shit.
guy was on mushrooms and apparently pissed off at the crowds in the streets and just started stabbing people. Yeah, crazy story, crazy story. But so we didn't go out that night. We stayed inside the house, thankfully. Next morning, she woke up to go to work. So I guess that was the 5th of July. She woke up to go to work, and I go, you know what? My legs, it's not right. Something's not going on here. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to Kaiser, because I remember a friend of mine back in the day. He had a DVT. Um, I think it stands for deep vein thrombosis, if I'm not butchering it. But he had DVTs in his legs. So I go, you know what? Let me just, the off chance I got insurance. Let me go to the doctor and use my insurance that I paid for to rule out DVT. Maybe it happened. So I go to my local Kaiser, and I believe I think it was a Saturday or something, Saturday or Sunday, and they didn't have many machines available. They couldn't do a scan on my leg, but they were able to do a CT with contrast. So they do the CT with contrast, which, for people that don't know what that is, they basically inject iodine into your bloodstream. It shoots through your body, and they watch it on a CT scan to see it travel through your heart, make sure that your blood's traveling good, making sure there's no blockages anywhere, anything like that. I might be giving the very layman's terms on what that is, not in the medical field, but I'm pretty sure I'm nailing it correctly.
Yeah,
Um,
people get the gist of it.
yeah. So she goes, go down to the hospital now and get the CAT scan on your leg. We should have the results from the CT by the time you get there. So at this point, my mom actually had picked me up. I took an Uber to the first doctor's office, and then my mom met me there. So my mom met me there to take me to the other hospital because I couldn't put my foot down on the gas pedal. And my mom takes me to the hospital. And as I'm checking in at the hospital, they call me from the other, and they go, you need to admit yourself right now to the emergency. You have a bilateral pulmonary embolism. And I go, a what? And they go, just get over there. So they put me in a wheelchair. They immediately hooked me up to like not an IV, but have like a line open for them to start, putting the blood thinners in or whatever. So I look up pulmonary embolism. And if you Google bilateral pulmonary embolism, it's like basically like you're going to die. You're dying right now. So I start freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? My mom's there. Then I start, I post online that, hey guys, keep me in your well wishes or whatnot. So a couple friends that are that are respiratory therapists reached out to me, and they're like, you should be fine if you're not falling over right now. Don't freak out or whatever. Um, Doctor pulls me back into the back room, finally gets me back there, and he goes, "You have a medium to high grade bilateral pulmonary embolism, meaning you have blood clotting both of your lungs. Both of your lungs are blocked with blood clots right now. It's not to the point that we need to go in there and get them out, however they get them out, whether it's putting a line or something through. I don't know if they like Drano them out, how whatever." He goes, "But you're pretty close. Had you not come in within 7 to 10 days, you would have died. 100%. You would be dead. You wouldn't be alive." I'm like, "Oh shit." I go, so I ask him straight up, I go, "Do you think this was from taking steroids?" And he goes, "Well, when was the last time you taken steroids?" And I had been in off season. I go, "I'm on TRT, but I've taken, heavy doses of this before." He goes, "Well, we've removed the black label on testosterone in regards to blood clots. So I don't think that it's from prior steroid use." And then starts asking me about work. And he goes, "Dude, you're working too much. You're stressing yourself out. You're putting way too much on your plate. You need to stop. You're gonna work yourself to death." And I remember that's when I got home. They kept me there 24 hours. They kept me on a drip until my red blood cell count was down to a number that was somewhat manageable. Sent me home on 90 days worth of medication for blood thinners. They had me on Eliquis for 90 days. Um, and then when I got home, that's when I was like, you know what, this is where I need to slow down. I've proven who I am. I've traveled to shows every single weekend. This is coming back to talking about, being at shows for your athletes. I've traveled to shows on my own dime every single weekend. I'm losing money at this point, charging people $200 a month and then going and flying to shows, staying there for 3, 4 days at a time. I'm negative. I need to, this has to turn into a business, even though it is my passion. Otherwise I'm going to die, so at that moment was when I kind of started treating things a little bit more as a business, and understanding that, hey, I talk to clients on the phone. I go over, I'd say, "Hey, if I don't have 3 athletes in a show, I'm not going to travel. If you want me to travel, you need to make sure, whether it's a portion of my travel costs or all of my travel costs, we got to make sure that it's covered so I can get out there and do what I'm passionate about without feeling like I need to win in order to recoup your money." As much as we want to win every show, I think, sometimes it's not how the chips fall. And, yeah, it's the goal every time, but sometimes it's just not how the
Sometimes it
cookie.
just is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you're the best on stage and you don't win, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that happens too. That's unfortunate. And we love a sport that is so oddly controversial because, and I'd love, I've reached out and I've tried to get some really, well-known judges to come on and talk, and they're like, not a chance. But I want people to understand these people are human,
Yes.
and they're given criteria guidelines, and it is up to them to decipher to the best of their abilities who fits those guidelines according to them. And when you only out there for, 10, 15 seconds, especially like at an amateur show, and you've got someone who's really nervous and they rush through their posing super quick and then they're off, you don't give the judge enough time to really look at you and say, "Oh, you know what? This individual checks all my boxes. I love their flow. I love their stage presence. I can clearly see that they have a great condition. All the muscles are clearly visible. They're not holding subcutaneous water. This is a great look. They're on my top 5 list." You rush out there, or especially some of these bigger national shows. I would never want to be a judge at some of these. I don't know how they do it. I'd go crazy. You got 60, 70 people in one single height class. There's no way that you can clearly be at your best of your judging capabilities when you have that many people to try and decipher from, especially at a pro qualifier when all those people look phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, you know, you do the best to your ability as an athlete and a coach to bring, something special to the stage, and hopefully the moons align.
And honestly, that's what I like the most about Bikini. I like a lot about Bikini. I could talk for hours and hours on the things that why I like Bikini, why I coach Bikini, and more than a physical standpoint, and a lot from the mental standpoint of it being entry level. But I love Bikini in the sense that okay, I don't like to, I don't really like to talk like this, but let's go ahead and toot my own horn and say the coaches that are coaching at the top of the food chain at the Olympia, let's say the top 25 athletes in the Olympia, or let's just say every Olympia coach that's out there. Let's not take anything away from anybody. We all deliver an amazing package. In bodybuilding, yes, you're going to have those one offs that are going to be a little bit different, but for the most part, the look should be the same. The biggest, driest, hardest, most conditioned, best posing wins. But where bikini, you have, for example, Jamie. She brings her girls in bursting full. They're to the bone, as full as they can possibly be. Any fuller, and it's going to be too much. Then you have James. He brings them in a certain type of way. You have Kim, who brings the girls in a certain type of way. James, who brings the girls in a certain type of way. They all have their own different interpretation of bikini, and each one of their athletes are going to look different, but also respectively good at the same time. So, while a certain look, for example, may be harder or softer on one girl versus the other, that's going to be pretty, I'd say people don't have a signature look, but we bring athletes in a certain way because we are trying to decipher what does Sandy want to see today? What does Bill want to see today? I'm not bringing this is the biggest, hardest, because that's what I see, because that's a little bit less subjective, although it can still be subjective. There's the controversy with Derek versus Hottie, which still is going to go on, forever. But bodybuilding can be less subjective in the terms of he's bigger, he's harder, you can be smaller in bikini and win. You can be bigger in bikini and win. But ultimately at the end of the day, it's me trying to decipher and figure out when Tyler is looking out at these women, what's he seeing? Not what am I seeing? What is he seeing? What is he looking for? And I think that's the art of bikini, and that all of us do our own different interpretation of what bikini is. But on any given day, my top athlete can go against a lot of these other top athletes in the world and stand toe to toe. Maybe not going to walk away with the win every single show, but in the last 3 years that Tara's been competing, she hasn't missed a top 5 in a show not the Olympia. So Pittsburgh Pro, Arnold, all the way down the line, it's top 5 every single show. Does that mean that she's the biggest on stage? No. She's never the tightest waist on stage. This is her look that fits the criteria the best for her. And it was my job to come to that conclusion and find that out. And that's my job as a bikini coach, is where does that balance lie for the individual of where are we full but not too full? Where are we full but your conditioning showing? Where are we not too conditioned to where now your fullness isn't showing? Where do we push your conditioning too far to where now there's too much space in between your muscle and your glute because you are a little bit older, right? Now you got to take into consideration masters bikini competitors. It's a whole lot different trying to get those glutes to tighten up versus a 40, 50-year-old male bodybuilder getting their glutes to tighten up, So not saying that, one is better or worse than the other, but this is just why it's come, I've fallen in there. It just so happened to be that, I'm pretty good at figuring those things out. Which I wasn't always, Tara lives with me. So we've been able to compete often, be backstage, talk to all the different judges. I'm not going to argue with them backstage and say, no, that's not what it was. I'll walk away from the judge and be like, nah, Tara's glutes were fuller. That's bullshit. Tara's upper glutes were better. I'm not going to argue to their face, but okay, we're going to keep working upper glutes more. I'm going to work until you tell me there's too much upper glute there, But if you do it enough times and you hear over and over again, upper glute, upper glute, upper glute, you're going to start putting so much emphasis on that upper glute that that's never going to be an area of feedback again for any of your athletes, So that's the thing that I love the most about bikini, is that even when your craft is at its top, at the very next show, it's just a little bit more dull. I'll use a very funny reference here since we're in terms of bodybuilding, but it's like your drawing needle. It's going to get duller and duller every show if you don't keep changing out that needle. So, yeah, we don't. A drawing needle can be dull. So I guess bad example, but you get where I'm going with this. Bikini, you got to stay up with what's changing.
Oh, I got the reference right on, which is a perfect way to parlay into this next thing. So, I've had some big super freaks on, And before I retired and just focused on coaching, I've been a gigantic walking, just super freak. Lots of fun, for sure. A lot of wear and tear on the body. PEDs are such an interesting thing. And I've talked about this just in the Kobe. I've talked about it with a lot of other people too. When you get to the top, as far as coaching goes, most top tier coaches, we all kind of do the same thing. And especially when it comes to PED related stuff, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're not inventing science. You're just finding things that work and how to properly implement them, because science on paper versus science on real life don't always work hand in hand. And so when you look at some of like the PEDs things, especially for guys too, and I've told people, like, it doesn't matter whether you hire me, it doesn't matter whether you hire Ariel, it doesn't matter whether you hire Justin Jacoby, you pick an elite coach. There's so many similarities. There's very few times that you look at someone's drug protocol and you're like, what the fuck? It's usually like pretty spot on to the same as the other shit, maybe slightly different variations in dosages, or maybe like for guys, maybe their testosterone was higher at the beginning and then it dropped down as the androgens went up, yada, yada, yada. There's all sorts of different ways of doing it, and everyone's got their own little special kick to it. Female chemicals are an interesting thing. And when I started really getting into coaching, that was my specialty. I was the female chemical guy, because I was one of the few people a long time ago that could successfully get women really, really shredded, but still keep their menstrual cycle. You see people all the time, they're like, oh, I took, this crazy dose of Anavar or whatever, or I hired this coach and I didn't have a period for 2 years. Like, one, you might have just a really sensitive system. It does happen. It's unfortunate. But for the most part, I think a lot of these side effects can be controlled and at least avoided with someone who understands what these compounds are actually doing. I brought up the stress thing earlier from the seizure because I wanted to talk about female hormones. Most people don't know that females produce testosterone through the adrenal glands. And so if you have huge levels of cortisol, you're overly stressed and you're just in these constant woe is me worry states, your adrenal glands are starting to diminish, which also affects your testosterone production. Low testosterone, low protein synthesis, your body's not able to properly uptake nutrition correctly. Horrible snowball effect from that.
Yeah.
When you've got some of these bikini girls, because you look at the bikini girls and most people would be like, oh, she's so dainty, she's so tiny. But these girls train hard. They put in work and they have muscle for sure. If someone's looking at common PED protocols, what are some of the bikini girls using? Because, most people would just look at a bikini girl from the outside and be like, oh, she probably takes Anavar, because that seems to be like the instant go-to. Now, I think that's a very old school way of looking at it, because not everyone responds well to Anavar. What are some of these other things? Like a girl comes in and maybe she's one of those people who's just super tiny, like skin and bones, has a hard time putting on muscle. What do you do for someone like that?
So I want to preface something by, and I know you and any person who's taken PEDs out there will agree with this. And I want to just start by saying it does not matter what PED somebody takes in a division. If the foundation isn't there, it doesn't matter what the cocktail is. And the reason why I want to preface that is because yes, PEDs are such a big part of bikini, and it's not that I don't want to talk about them. It's not something that I want to remain taboo, but I do think that there's a massive amount of people that will overlook those little things, i.e., example, sleep, example, stress, example, training intensity, training execution. Are you going into the gym and just ticking off the boxes to film content for Instagram? Or are you actually going in there and training? Because for the girl, it's actually going in there and training her fucking ass off. Maybe she don't even need Anavar. Maybe creatine's going to get her good for the first 2 years of her career until she goes there. So I don't want there to be this idea of like, because this is what's being said, that this is absolutely going to be the game changer, because it's not. Without those fundamentals, and that's what I see is dialed in at the higher level, is the fundamentals. They're really good at doing the basic shit, right? I think it's Kobe Bryant. He said that, you got to get really good at doing the basic shit. If you can't go to sleep at the same time every single day and wake up at the same time every single day, as an elite level athlete, you're going to be setting yourself back. Doesn't mean you're not going to win, but as an elite top level athlete, you want to get every inch ahead of the game that you possibly can. So if eating organic is going to get you 0.2% ahead of the game, then you're going to eat organic. If wearing a waist trainer is going to help you out by 0.5%, then you're going to wear a waist trainer. And I think that, again, at the top of the list, the girls that are performing well and having longevity are just that. But in terms of, to answer the question directly, I would say the things that are commonly being used, without any particular order of importance, or what is going to be most beneficial, would probably be Clen, Anavar, um, T3. Maybe from there, I would go into some HRT dosages with testosterone or Primo. Maybe kind of tie those in two together. That might be the level. Maybe growth. If you want to say, I do know, and I've heard of some girls using insulin as well. Um, so I think that anything along those lines would not be unheard of in conversation if you were having with a bikini competitor. And the reason why I mentioned the training first is because I don't want a younger athlete to listen to this and say, if I take all of those things that he's taking, I'm going to be at the top, because that's what all the top level. I don't think that all of the girls are taking every single one of these compounds. I maybe there isn't even one pro that's taking every single one of those compounds or utilizing them. But in terms of talking about making the spaghetti stick, I would say one or multiple of those are no, one or more of those things that I had mentioned are being used in every non-natural pro that's competing at the highest level. I say non-natural because there is a couple pro natural bikini competitors, Lana, Meg. I don't know of the rest of them that are out there. I have a natural bikini pro. She just placed third at the Ben Weeders. Hasn't never taken anything. So in terms of girls that are using enhancements, then I would say you could probably count on something like that. Anything past that, I couldn't say for sure. Like those compounds that I listed, I could say for sure. But things like DNP, I've heard of. Things like Tren, I've heard of. Oh, Mastron. Mastron is a common one that's used as well. Not as common as Primo, but Mastron gets used often. Um, I want to say it's very, very low dosages of DECA, but I think that's more so in the HRT scenario for older women with like osteoporosis. But I'm talking like 5 milligrams a week, so probably not anything that's gonna touch anything physiologically. But I think probably more so, I think now what people are leaning on is peptides. I think peptides are one of those things now where those also too, where I think people are getting a little bit cocktaily, and let's take everything and kind of see what sticks, see what works. I've even heard of, and I can't say for sure on this, but I even know of that there's, from speaking to a doctor that works with athletes, and I'm not trying to be controversial because it's that topic, so don't slide in my DM and say who's the athlete, because I don't know who the athlete is, but that are getting injections in their glutes to fill in that space. And to me, I don't think they're necessarily getting the injections to fill out and make the muscle bigger. But usually when a bikini athlete gets lean, they have that space in between their glute med and glute max. And I think that they're doing something with that to fill in that area, because there's no muscle there. You can't develop a muscle. And I don't know who it would be, so don't ask me who I think is doing it. I have absolutely no clue. But there's a big controversy right now where a lot of people are talking about it. And, like I said, I do know for a fact that I've talked to injectors that say that they've done it to competitors. Wouldn't give me names or anything along those lines. So please don't ask me. Please don't try to make me be the warrior of it. And at the end of the day, if the judges can't tell, I'm not going to tell my client. I will never tell my client to take something like that. Just want to put that out there right now. But if the judges can't tell, is somebody really doing something wrong at the end of the day? I mean, if they hit it that well, then hey, they got it past the dog's nose and they smuggled it onto the stage. But um, you know, those are the things that I think are common. That last one that I mentioned, I think is not common. I don't think it's something that I, because no one admits it, no one talks about it. It's things that you kind of see in person where you're like, huh, that doesn't really look right. And then talking from various injectors online, have mentioned that um, I can't say of any Olympians that I know for a fact. So if you're like, well, who is it that you're insinuating? For the most part, it's amateurs, and
It's always amateurs.
yeah, yeah. So again, those are the common ones that I know of, that I've heard of. If you want to know typically what I feel comfortable deploying, I don't know. I don't talk to other coaches and ask other coaches what they use, but for me, it's very mild. So you know, again, I know it's very cliche in the fact that we mentioned Anavar, but Anavar is something that I'll use. Clen is something that I'll use rarely, but sometimes I will use T3. And I say rarely because there's certain things that I'm just like, I don't want to mess with if I don't have to. And that's kind of one of those things that I don't want to, even if I'm doing it on paper the way that it should be done every single time, something goes wrong, so I try to mitigate as little as possible. And I've recently started experimenting a little bit more with primo in some athletes. But I would say for the most part, if you're a client working with me, one, I'm not going to bring it up to you. But if we start talking about things that you can or could benefit from, I am very, very basic in the sense of I'm still stuck in the old school days of kind of Anavar Clen, maybe using a T3 if need be, if HRT says someone needs testosterone. But I'm going to refer that out. I'm not going to be in charge of replacing someone's testosterone. I'm going to push them to work with a nurse practitioner. Can I do it? Yes, 100%. Do I want to do it? Coming back to the stress thing, I don't want to do posing. I don't want to stress on your posing. Tara does posing. I don't want to worry about something that a doctor could handle. If you're going to go get your testosterone from a clinic anyways, then let them do everything. If you're not going to go to a clinic, then okay, let's figure it out. But um, yeah, that's what I see. That's most common. And I again, there could be things. Maybe hey, maybe there's something I'm missing that the other top coaches are using. But I'm pretty sure that's the common across the board. Now, dosage and duration, that's a whole different story. That I can't speak on. And I think that might be a bigger indicator of coming back to that whole, and this is a horrible example to use with Bikini, but going back to the 2 weeks of Tren, you may be better off using Tren for 2 weeks than staying on Anavar for 8 months. That, again, is something where it's like, dosage and duration is very, very big and key, in my opinion, with Bikini longevity. I don't know about other divisions, but Bikini longevity, I think dosage and duration is top.
Yeah, the dose and duration thing, I mean, that's across the board for anything because the body can only handle things for so long before you either need to titrate up because you've generated a new homeostasis and that's what the body just thinks is normal, or you just start having issues.
Yeah.
Like when you start looking at blood work, especially when people are like, oh, like I only took Anavar. All right. Well, let's look at some of the surrounding factors in your day-to-day life. You know, do you think that having, a handful of drinks in the evening, is helping you? Let's take a look at your blood work. Oh my goodness, your liver enzyme is through the roof and you're not able to properly cleanse your blood. So now your resting glucose is 120, but it was 78. Going back to the duration and the dosaging thing, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt for sure. I try not to be negative Nancy all the time, but sometimes it, I remember this girl told me this years ago, and it's something that always stuck with me. people don't learn, they memorize. And so when I deal with other doctors, clinics, or whatever it may be, I'm pretty, you know, well guarded because you have to earn my trust in a situation like that. And I think it's very frustrating that I know more when you're the one who went to school for that long. Why am I teaching you things that you should be teaching me? And I bring this up because that's a common thing. They're like, oh, well, I went to the clinic and they told me that I need, 6 products and they want to bill me, $1,800. They want to do all this stuff. We have a mutual friend and she said, oh, hey, will you take over? I'm a diabetic and my current coach, that's not his specialty. And I just feel like I'm not really making the progress for the amount of effort that I'm putting into it. I said, sure, I'm sorry to hear that you're kind of going through a bum situation. Run me through everything that you're good doing. She's like, okay, let me get the notes from my husband, sends them over to me. And I'm like, I don't think that these notes are correct. And she goes, no, that's right. I'm like, you're taking 40 milligrams of testosterone. To put that into perspective, your natural production for a female is about 2 milligrams. Bro, if you look at that from a percentage standpoint, that's banana sandwich. That's a huge fuck increase. The fact that you don't sound like me because you ran that dose for months on end is mind blowing. And so, obviously, we made some adjustments, fixed quite a few things. And all of a sudden, she just started packing on muscle tissue like crazy. And I'm like, she was like, how is it that I'm taking less stuff, but I'm growing like a weed? Like, when things work in perfect synergy, the body can do amazing things. Just because you took a bunch of something doesn't mean that it's going to give you better results. Your body could fight you on it, tooth and nail. And so I brought up the Anavar thing because I don't want people listen to this. Do your own research. Do your own research. Talk to doctors. Talk to established coaches who have a good track record of bringing in athletes correct and doing it healthy. Because there's plenty of people out there that are like, oh, I got X amount of pro cards a year. And what happened to those athletes? They're permanently ruined and they never compete again. That's not the kind of reputation that I want. I want my athletes to thrive in all aspects of life. But I don't want you to think that Anavar is the only option that you have. And it might be the only option that you have from the clinic. Maybe there's a couple of clinics that offer Winstrol as well. T-Ball, unsung hero, works amazing for women with less side effects than Anavar. So I bring that up because I just want you to understand that there are options and not to just stick with one thing because you heard it on the internet and you thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread because your favorite bikini girl takes it. Maybe that's the only thing she had access to. Maybe it really works that well for her, but there's options out there. For whatever reason.
Even nowadays, there's more information readily available, right? Like I think when we first got into it, there was no chat GPT where you could even ask basic questions. Your cycle or wherever you were taking was getting formulated based off of forums, that
forums, or if you were lucky, you had a solid gym bro who competed, who could give you some real life advice.
Exactly. So back then I could understand it being a little bit more common and saying, well, I'm taking this because my buddy said that's what his friend said to take. And he look at, he's doing all this, and the third, but nowadays it's like, there's so much more information. And again, I don't want to put this off and make it seem like, go do people could talk to me about it, whatever. But like I said, maybe there is something where it's like, you're willing to, maybe there's women out there that say, you know what? I don't care what my voice sounds like. I'm okay with virilizing. I'm okay with getting a mustache. If that means that I'm going to get more muscle in 1 year than I would have gotten in 3 or 5, maybe I'm going to be a little bit harder or masculine looking. I want to take that. Hey, you, by all means, don't let me tell you not to take, tell you that taking Tren for 2 weeks is bad. Don't let me tell you that that's a bad idea. Let that be your own situation. Go look this up right now. Maybe go do some homework on your own. As if you're a bikini competitor, why can't I take tren? What would be the what would happen to me as a female if I took 50 milligrams of tren a week? What would be the side effects? What would be potential side? Understand that. Don't take it because you heard, the Olympia coach saying it, whether that's safe or unsafe, you know?
It's funny that you bring that up for the girl who's like, I just don't care. I'd do whatever it takes.
Yeah, bro.
I had one of those. It was one of my first like really big like gear users. Was going through a really, really rough divorce, and she was just like, whatever it takes. I was like, really? Like whatever it takes? She's like, whatever it takes. It was one of the shortest preps we've ever done for anyone on the team. The whole duration, including a push and into the actual contest prep, was slightly less than 11 weeks. In that duration, we went from just looking like a normal, like off-season bikini girl to one of the most shredded figure girls I've ever brought into a show ever. And we gained 22 pounds. So can it be done? Yeah. Is it smart? No.
Never, 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 never. And let me just, I don't know how close we are to ending this, but let me just finish by saying one thing that it girls, it's not worth it. Let me tell you right now, if you think that your life is going to change because you are a pro, or you think that your life is going to change because you are an Olympian, or you think that your life is going to change because you are Mr. or Miss Olympia, you are so very wrong. You are going to continue to have to work. Um, you are going to continue to have to brand yourself. You're going to have to continue to market yourself. I know there's a lot of you young bikini girls out there that don't know who Ronnie Coleman is, but just go take a look at Ronnie Coleman, one of the greatest bodybuilders on planet Earth, and he almost lost everything before Young LA brought him on because he had nothing left. This sport moves very, very quickly, and you'll be at the top one day, and there'll be another star the following day. So, do this because you love it, but if you want to monetize yourself, if you want to make money outside of it, you're going to have to do that off of the stage. It's not going to come. You can build credibility from being on the stage, yes, but the actual sport itself is not going to change your life. It's the person that you are. So stay true to who you are as a person. Don't start acting a certain type of way because you think that social media wants to see that. Stay authentic, and also, remind yourself that it's going to be over one day. And if you don't set yourself up correctly, it doesn't matter what drugs you took. It doesn't matter what drugs you didn't take. If you don't set yourself up, once this day comes where you're done competing, you're probably going to have a pretty bitter taste in your mouth towards the sport.
Yeah, you beat me too, because I was going to bring up about monetizing yourself because athletes don't get contracts anymore. It's very, very seldom that even the guys, you know, get anything more than just, hey, use my discount code. The industry has changed so much, and it's not that it's for the better or the worse. It's just different.
Different, yeah.
You pivot with what's in front of you, and you know some of these people have made good investments with hiring a full-time video guy, and they've do well with their YouTube, or some of the people with the OnlyFans do very well too. But once you get to the point where you start making some of these big paychecks, you got to be smart with the money because you don't need to. This is just a recommendation, not a financial guy. Use that money smartly. Like if you go to the casino, like if you can see this, my sweatshirt says gamble. I'm a semi-professional blackjack player. When you go to the casino, you have to set a ground rule. This is the amount of money that I'm okay with losing if shit goes sideways today. It's the same rule you have with investments. Let's say you've got a big YouTube account. You make $20,000 a month. Perfect. How much money do you need to live? Write it all down. Have an Excel spreadsheet. This is my rent. This is my food. This is my car note. This is my insurance. Perfect. It costs me $3,500 at a bare minimum to live. Perfect. I'm going to take out 5,000 from that. I've paid all my bills. I have an extra $1,500 to sit there. And if I use it, cool. If I don't use it, awesome. It'll just stay there in the account and roll over to the next one. You've now taken that other money. Now you pretend it doesn't even exist. You either put it in your savings, you put it into a smart investment, you have an investment manager who handles it for you, whatever it may be. But live dramatically under your means. Because if something happens to you, like that poor girl that bikini girl in Canada, who had the work accident, who no longer has her legs anymore. She's in good spirits about it, but shit can happen at any moment. And you need to be able to pivot. And if you're the sole provider for your family and you're not thinking ahead, you're doing everyone a disservice. So think about things long term, live underneath your means, and be happy. Before we wrap it up, I had one question. I went through the list of questions and we pretty much answered all of them through our fun conversation. But there was one, and it was a neat one because it's a coaching related thing that I truly don't know your answer for. When you take on an athlete, what are generally the first things that you notice in someone's contest prep? Like from a visual standpoint, that's how the question was written, is what is the first thing that you notice during someone's contest prep as far as body changes go?
Are we talking about in terms of it going down into show, or just taking on a new athlete in general, like cutting down into a show, leading out?
Yeah. The official prep.
Like once prep starts and they start leaning out, what's the first thing that I notice? Shape. The shape is the first thing that comes. So if right off the bat we don't have shape at it's that's, we probably shouldn't start prep. If you have high body fat percentage and I can't see that S that the judges are going to want to see on stage, that muscle is not going to be there when we cut down. So it's the first thing that I should see. It's the first thing that I typically do see. And that's long before there's even I'm not long. I'm exaggerating, but that's before I'll see a tie-in. That's before I'll see an ab. That's before I'll see a shoulder cap or separation, slight separation. I use the word separation, but people probably assume like I'm thinking deep separation. But I just mean where you can tell that there's shoulder, there's arm. Yeah, that's pretty much where it's kind of that when you see that front pose and it's popping and the back pose turns around and it's the shape of the upper glutes are there. That's what I typically see first for me.
When you're adjusting people's things, are you a visual person or are you a stats kind of person? Like I coach everything purely from a visual standpoint. I don't need to know what you weigh until we get close to the last 4 weeks of the prep.
I'm an everything person. I'm looking at everything. Visual will be the first thing that I look at, but I will never not look at the other metrics that I'm looking at before making a definitive decision. I can gather a good amount from visual, but that's always going to change because sometimes people have I can't explain it. Sometimes people have a freak week where maybe they cheated on their diet or they had a terrible week and I didn't look at their form before I looked at their photos and I'm like, oh shit, you look better this week. And then I get in the form and they're like, oh, I missed 3 meals on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday I had wings all day for the game or whatever. Sorry, coach, I won't do it again. I know I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, oh, damn. I wish I looked at the form first. I could have yelled at you before I praised you, made you think that you should be having chicken wings and missing meals. But yeah, I'll take all metrics into consideration. I would say that measurements hold the most weight to me. That's the number one thing that in bikini, because we're looking for a specific ratio, right? We're looking for typically hip to waist ratio. You want big hips, small waist. So I know that if I am, for example, if someone's hips are coming down, I'm okay with that. That's going to happen during prep. They're not going to start prep with 40-inch hips and end prep with 40-inch hips. But if as that prep is happening, the ratio is getting better of the waist is shrinking faster than the hips are shrinking, I'm happy. That's where I'm ultimately happy. Now, I will be mind fucked if someone stays the same weight for 8 weeks. Like, why is this not moving? Like, everything on paper, this should be moving, you know. But if someone loses 4 inches, which they're not going to lose 4 inches off their waist, at least my clients don't. But if over the course of 8 weeks they lost 4 inches off of their waist and their weight stayed the same, I mean, I'm looking at, obviously looking at a super that doesn't have, it's, out of this world, but I'm not going to make a change because their weight stayed the same. So yeah, I think the first thing I look at is photos. I'll take weight into consideration. Weight probably with female competitors, with bikini athletes at least, has the least amount of weight in my decision making process. I do take it into consideration, but I will also blatantly look past it multiple times if photos, measurements, strength, those metrics are increasing at a pretty rapid rate. Then I'm happy.
So I notice, and everyone's got their own life dilemmas and whatnots. But the one thing that I noticed consistently, and one of the reasons why I stopped coaching bikini girls, and it has nothing to do with the division. I just noticed that consistently the girls that I were working with had the same life related issue. And it was always, it seems so just comical now, but it was always my boyfriend ate my fucking meal prep. He's such a piece of shit. All he wants is sex from me. Doesn't he know I'm 3 weeks out from a show and I feel like shit? Tell him to leave me alone. And I just got tired of hearing the same. It was literally the same thing over and over. And people got some work related stuff too. I noticed when I started telling people, hey, you got a lot of shit going on right now. Skip the gym, go to a salt float, go spend time at the beach, go spend time in the mountains, go for a hike. Like today is not a gym day. Put your phone in the car and just kind of retard your brain. Once they got that ability to just let that evilness ooze out of them, then their body reset and they were like, I'm kicking ass. My weight, is down. My waist shrunk 1/2 inch. Like I'm not feeling bloated. Do you have one? I'm sure you hear those complaints too, but do you have, pretty consistent recommendations for these people to kind of get out of their funk when they're having these life woes?
So look, honestly, I don't, and this could just be in the personality type difference. This is not I'm talking to you straight. So obviously I'm not talking shit to you or saying anything about you, but maybe the type of person that you come across in attracts people that are going to openly. But none of my clients complain about men to me. That's so I don't know if that's something because they assume that Tara is reading my messages, or I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. If there's a direction I'm going with, but there seems to be. It seems to be that most of my female clients will not vent to me about men. If they are going to vent to me, it's going to be about kids, work, life, things being, just to their ears. But there's something about it where they just don't do it. Now, I do have certain things, but it's funny that you talk about telling clients to take a day off of the gym. My clients, if they have something going on where I'm like, hey, you're stressed out, don't go to the gym today, they're gonna get 10 times more stressed out. Don't take that from me. I'm not gonna go to the gym. I just had a conversation actually with one of my clients. I'm not gonna say her name, but if she watches this, she's gonna know who she is. But she said something about like in her off season, what if her workout days don't match up to where she can't do this on this day? And I go, well, you're doing 3 lower body days, 2 upper body days. Skip one of your lower body days on the weekend. She was like, what? Well, you're in the off season. Skip one of your lower body days. You're doing 3 lower body days per week, right? She goes, yeah. And I go, all 3 of our lower body days were focused solely on your glutes because your quads and hamstrings are pretty built, right? She goes, yeah. And I go, so you're going to get, 12 sets of glutes on those other 2 days. And she goes, but what about the exercises that I don't do? So, it's funny because that's when it comes down to explaining to her in that moment of, hey, having that mental reset of going out with your family for the weekend or going to church retreat or whatever it is that you do as a person. She values church and religion, which is why I mentioned those 2 things. um, if do those things, if that's going to propel you forward 50,000 steps, that's what I want for you. But I don't, like I said, I don't get the boyfriend thing. But if somebody is that stressed, I will start to propose the idea of, hey, maybe it's time to take a step back and remove our thoughts of prep. And sometimes that in itself is enough of like, oh my gosh, he's going to take this away from me if I don't start sleeping 6 hours a night. Because if I get your check in and you're telling me every week you're sleeping 4 hours, I'm going to, by week 2 or 3, I'm going to tell you to pull out of prep. Like, flat out, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to say it in a way that, hey, I, I was an amateur for 12 years. I chased a pro card for a very long time. I know what someone is doing that's in year 12 right now in prep, and they're not sleeping 4 hours. They're sleeping 8. They're hitting their meals. They're doing all of these things. So that person is going to run circles through you if you're not getting 4 hours of sleep. Let's figure out how we can get the 4 hours of sleep. Otherwise, we need to revisit that uncomfortable idea of maybe it's time to pull out of prep. So I think with me, it's figuring out how big is this problem that we're in right now? Is it something that we just need to pause, zoom out, look at everything from a clear head and see, hey, this isn't that big of a deal? Or is it something where it's like, if I continue on with prep, I'm getting a divorce, and so I need to stop prep right now and get my life in order? At the end of the day, my job as a coach, and I'll tell this to anyone that I work with, is to make sure that my athlete left prep saying bodybuilding was cool. Like, if you do a prep and you didn't like spray tan, you didn't like not knowing what time you went on stage, you didn't like having rice cakes on show day, and you walk away and say, you know what, bodybuilding wasn't for me. That sport wasn't for me. But because of my coach, I had a great prep. He made sure that I was taken care of during pre-peak. The show day, he made sure that I was calm as possible, letting me know that the shows don't have a set time where you go on stage. Overall, prep was a good experience, but bodybuilding wasn't for me. That's where I want to be. So if I have to convince someone in prep, hey, I know this is your first prep, but you shouldn't be stepping on a bodybuilding stage. This isn't for you. And they end up, going on and living a happy life if we don't work together anymore. I would rather that than I forced to get here. I have $4,000 in credit card debt. My husband left me. My thyroid is in the kicker. My cortisol's through the roof. I was doing 2 hours of cardio because I cheated on my diet 4 weeks out. I would rather convince someone it's smart to pull out of this show and do the next 60,000 muscle contest shows that they have on their schedule. They're not going anywhere, than to push and be ready for this show. Because back in my day, when I was competing, we didn't have 4 shows a month. There was, 8 shows in Southern California. You had, the Fresno, you had the Gov Cup. I don't even know if you had the SAC championships back then, but it was very limited what you could do. Now,
We had Constanta.
yeah, you got everything now, man. There's every single weekend. Hell, you got 5 bikini pro shows on one weekend, let alone 10 amateur shows on the same weekend. That's coming back to, coaching and being present for clients. There's been times where I was coaching Masters USAs and the Ben Weeder at the same time. I was going to bed as my client was waking up in Virginia to send me her check-in photos, get through with sending her stuff for the first few hours of the day. Now my client's waking up for Masters USAs to be competing. So here I am, no sleep, which I tried not to schedule shows like that. So if you're listening out there, please no 2 pro qualifiers in the same day in the United States, whoever sets those shows. I would love that as a coach, but I did it. I was on a couple hours of sleep talking about gambling. I stayed up by playing a little bit of blackjack. I actually went home with, $1,400 on Masters USA's. It was
Nice,
dope.
nice.
Yeah. My client got second. My other client at the Ben Weeder, she got first in the pro 40 plus natural bikini, and she got third in the open pro natural bikini. So missed an Olympia qualification by 2 spots, won $1,400, and made sure that every single one of my clients didn't have to wait for a response or wait for a week for their reverse diet.
Very nice, very nice.
Mhm.
I had two have done those multiple show things in different time zones, different countries, and you're just like, there's not enough caffeine in the world for this.
No more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the worst one is we had 3 people competing the same day, all in different. 2 were in different states and 1 was in a different country. And I just remember setting my alarm for 3 a.m, realizing that there was no way that I could get any sleep for the rest of the day. That I
Dude.
was just going to have to be up.
Yeah. And that was the thing.
So-
So that was the thing, is that day, that the day of the show, I had to roll into Prejudging started at 8 a.m. on the East Coast for Ben Weeder. So I'm at 5 a.m. I'm watching her online. She gets off stage, making sure that I make sure she got to stay on point in between prejudging and finals. And then at that point, now my client's done with her hair and makeup in Vegas. Okay, it's 11 a.m. Now we go downstairs and play the waiting game at Masters USA's. Okay, she's off stage. Now finals is going on for the Ben Weeder. I'm like, I love it. I'm not complaining by any means, but it's just talking about in terms of like, communication, being hands-on and making that response time. That was one. I loved it. Yeah, I didn't get a pro card that weekend, and yeah, I didn't get an Olympia qualification, but that was, I did my job, and that there's no more satisfying feeling to me than knowing that I did my job. Sure, winning shows is nice, but having like those exit interviews with clients that don't compete anymore or whatever, having them tell me that, hey, you made me feel like I wasn't number 13 and you paid attention to everything that every other coach didn't listen to from me. That means everything for me. That's why I do what I do. And, making it to the Olympia, making it to the Arnold it's a great feeling as well, but that feeling, comes and goes, it dies, and every year's a reset. So, you're only an Olympia coach until the next year. And if you don't win a show, yeah, you're still an Olympia coach from your prior, but it's over. Those transformations last a lifetime.
So as we go to wrap this up, I think people need to understand some of the inner workings behind the coach. It's a lot to be the significant other of a coach that does it at the level that we do it. We get pulled in a lot of different directions, both physically as well as emotionally. And it takes a very special person to stand with someone who coaches, especially, you know, we get some interesting progress pictures. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes you're kind of like, hey, we need to have a conversation about what you're sending in because you're getting a little too fresh. Everyone who's a coach, guy or girl, doesn't matter. If you have a significant other, make sure that you show them that you appreciate them. Because when I travel for a show, most of the time I'm by myself. And I have a wife, I have 2 kids, and that's a lot to leave on someone. And for someone to be able to stand ground and hold down the fort, well, I got to go and deal with half naked people in a hotel room and make sure that they don't die. It takes a special person for that, and it's awesome when she gets to come with me. But a lot of the time, there's a lot of other things happening at home that don't get the praise that they should. So if you're a coach, you have a significant other that is a coach, just know that we see you and we appreciate you. There's a lot of love there. It might not get said every day, but trust me, this crazy life that we live to make this living, it's for you. Because I'd be totally fine living in a tiny little fucking hut on an island all by myself.
Dude, In-N-Out's paying pretty damn good right now. I mean, dude, no, honestly, she knows that too. Like, we're riding the wave of her competing right now, and I tell her, I go, because she's mentioned, like, hinted at feeling like she needs to keep competing in order for this to keep going, and I go, we're past that, babe. Like, yes, that's what started everything, but we're past that. The second that you don't want to do this anymore, you can be done. You can walk away scotch-free. And the second that you think that this is starting to get in between our relationship, we can have that conversation and sit down. And if there's a different route that you want to go, we got to have a plan. We can't go from making what we're making now to tell me, all right, just go figure something different out. No, we got to, hey, all right, if we're going to do this, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, working as a bikini coach in particular, where 95% of my clients are women, it was definitely tough for her in the beginning. Looking over at my phone and seeing my explore feed is all pictures of women in bikinis. But I think once she kind of, I don't want to say realized, but was able to kind of understand that, okay, this is income. This is what he's doing to provide for us. This is how I'm able to be at these shows. This is how I'm able to chase, the Olympian dream, so to speak. I trust him. I know that he's not doing anything. And some of my guy friends, they ask, hey, does she not trip out? Like, you flew to Tokyo by yourself with another female. Granted, that female was with her mom and child, but your girl's okay with that? And I go, yeah, she knows that this is what, you know, has our family, essentially taken care of now, allows her to take the time off that she needs to compete, to visit her family, to do the things that she needs to do and all that kind of stuff. But it's, you know, not for the weak, I will say that, and if I can lead on one thing, if you're new into coaching or you've been coaching for a while and you're thinking about coaching your significant other, don't do it.
I learned that the hard way.
Do not do it. We have a great dynamic, a great relationship, but there are certain times in our relationship where it becomes coach client, and the way that we speak to each other is not the way that we would speak to each other as fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it may be. So it takes two very strong people to make it through that. So I'm saying, even if you think that it's going to be this Bonnie and Clyde love story, and you're a great bikini coach, I believe you, brother, whoever you are, or sister, if you're willing to coach, your significant other. But dude, just avoid it at all costs if you can. We have the one-off chance of it working. It hasn't always been sunshines and daisies and rainbows. It's been a lot tougher than better. Even now, we still have certain times where we, kind of butt heads on what shows she's going to be doing, when she's going to be competing, all kinds of stuff like that. But if you can avoid it at all costs. Keep that stuff separate, and support your significant other as the competitor that they are. If they're a bikini competitor or a men's physique competitor, just support them in any way that they can. Don't tell them, you don't hint at, you could do this better, or you shouldn't be doing that cardio, or that doesn't seem right. Just support them. If there's something that you guys both think isn't going right, encourage your significant other to talk to the coach, but just support them in every single step of the way. If they are client or coach, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Give the love and the love will come back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know it is food time for both of us. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and blabber with me. This is always great. It's always a pleasure to you. All right, amigo. Well, you enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk to you.
Sounds good, brother.